Hi. So I've kind of taken today to really just be with what's going on, to just be with it, and and to connect with people um, that I love and that I feel very safe with. And there's been a lot of you who have reached out to me via text, via phone, via Facebook, and I'm sending you all so much love. And for the most part, I've decided to just take today to just be with it. But I did want to reach out to everybody and yeah, just create a little space to start dialoguing about this. So that's what I'm doing. I want to start with just saying that I love you and I see you and you matter to me. And whatever you're feeling, it's okay to be feeling that. This is going to affect everyone. And for some of us, it's going to feel really traumatic and really personal. And that makes a lot of sense. So when we work in our spirituality and in that process of awakening, it's really important that we also hold space for the humanity and for the humility of just being a human with emotion and with thought, being a human who has a history, being a human who has experienced trauma and experienced injustice and experienced the shadow. And so when something like this happens that is so huge and so obvious and so very painful for so many, it can really trigger that sense of trauma, that sense of fear, sense of injustice, that sense of something is happening to me and I don't like it and I don't want it and I don't know what to do and I feel so powerless. So it also points us right to that shadow. I wanted to talk a little bit about the shadow. So anybody that's done any kind of personal work in a psycho-spiritual sense, you know that the shadow work is vital. It's vital to your development, to your evolution. And as like spiritual people, we can sometimes sort of just fall into just working on our own shadow. Let me just deal with my own shadow, deal with my own demons, and feel better, right? Just feel a little better, because when we start to finally face that stuff, we're able to make positive change. We're able to start to transform. But the next step, the next development, once we get to the point of facing and addressing and really compassionately holding space for our shadow, is that it's time to do that for others. And what this gives us an opportunity for is to do that in a really big way. We are getting this opportunity to see the shadow of this country. And it's really painful to look at. And it's supposed to be. There's no reason why this should feel good. So I think one of the most important things we can do right now is be really willing to see that shadow and not get caught in our anger or our grief or our frustration or our self-righteousness, but instead be willing to have everything stripped away and just see the shadow for what it is. And you know, it's not just the shadow of the racism and the sexism and all of that, right? That's all been becoming clearer and clearer on a cultural level. But we also have this other piece, and this is the thing that I've been really sitting with today. The shadow of all those people in Middle America who came out and voted. All those people who have felt so alone and so abandoned. The people who have felt invisible for a long time now. And I think it's important that we hold space for that too. And it's really easy to just be angry, especially if you're going online and you're seeing some of the really negative and hateful stuff. I, for one, haven't done that. And I will eventually. I'll dip into that because that's part of doing this shadow work. But rather than getting caught in the anger and the fear around that part of our country, around those people in our community of the United States of America, instead, we want to see them. That's what this is asking us to do, is to see them. The same way that the Black Lives Movement is asking us to see that. The same way the women's movement is asking us to see that. Like, we need to really see and hold space for it. It doesn't mean we have to like, it doesn't mean we have to be excited about where those people are coming from, but we need to really see it because these are our fellow human beings, and they've felt so alone and cut off that this seemed like the right option. And for them, perhaps it was. So I think it's really important that we hold space for that part of the shadow too. So when we're looking at this as shadow work on a grand scale, we may as well just include it all. We're doing it anyway. We're here doing the work. Let's just let it all be part of it, okay? So how do we do this shadow work? I mean, a big part of it is just being willing to see it. Just like you would with an addiction. Let's say you've been addicted to a drug and you've been using this drug for many years. You've got to be able to see that addiction before you can make any change. You have to see it clearly for what it is, for the suffering that it creates. We need to do that here. We need to have this moment of clarity that comes with this bottoming out. This is a bottoming out. Not to say it couldn't get worse. It could, right? It definitely could. It probably will in some ways. But let's utilize that to be able to really clearly contact the shadow. And when we can really clearly contact that, let's just be with it. That's what I've been doing today, just being with that. And that's a lot for our sweet, tender hearts to take, especially on a day like today. So I totally understand if today's not the day. If you're like, not today. Today I just need to be mad, or I just need to be afraid. But we do want to move into the next stage as soon as we can. We don't want to get stuck in the anger, in the fear. So we want to see this shadow. We want to hold space for this shadow. And we want to start to love it. And I don't mean love it in a personal way. I don't love it in that way. Personal me, Jessica, is certainly not in love with what's going on, with what has happened. But let's tap into a bigger love. Let's tap into a universal love. Let's tap into the kind of love that has nothing to do with any of this, with the politics, with the personal. That's the kind of love we want to tap into while working with the shadow. We are not separate from the shadow. In an ultimate sense, we are not separate from the person who proudly voted for Trump. We're not separate from the person who is celebrating. We're not separate from Trump himself. That's on an ultimate level. Now we need to hold that right along with the personal, okay? Because there's the personal. We don't want to try to bypass that or ignore that. There's the personal. There's the suffering and the pain that comes with what's happened. But that does not change the fact that there is no separation between you and that person who is celebrating tonight. So we need to sit with that and let that break our hearts. Let that pierce this emotional heart. Let it drop into our gut. Then we're really getting somewhere. Then the real work begins. When we can let that shadow pierce us to that level, and we can have that kind of intimacy and that kind of love with the people and the ideas that we're so afraid of, that we're so angry about, then we're in it. Then we can start to practice spiritual activism. And we can go in and out of this. There might be, a minute where you're just in terror and anger and fear and grief. You gotta let yourself be there too. But that is only one part of this. And if we narrow our attention down to just that part of experience, not only are we suffering needlessly, but we're also missing an amazing opportunity to heal and to transform on a personal level and on a national level. Now, if some of the worst case things happen, the things that some of us are noticing that come up in the mind, some of these really scary scenarios, if that happens, I know I, for one, will be on the front lines. I know that if I'll do what I have to do, right? There's that level. Taking physical action, material action, right? But there's another piece that I feel is equally as important, and I think will, whether it comes to that or not, will empower the activism, the action that I can take. And that is the spiritual activism. That is speaking from and acting from a place of knowing that I am not separate from Trump or anyone that supports him. Coming from a place of love and intimacy with Trump and the people that support him. My actions, my activism becomes something very different when I can love and accept to that degree. That's radical love. That's radical acceptance. That's radical activism. Doesn't mean we don't need to do the other things too. Take the actions in the world. But if we can let it come from this foundation of spiritual activism, I think that we can begin to cultivate a really different kind of change. And in this deconstruction, in this coming apart, in this falling apart, in this crisis, we have the possibility to transform individually and transform as a nation, as a people. And again, I just think it's important to continue to say, we hold that with the very human experience of what's going on. So there's that. I think another really important thing to touch into is the trauma of what's going on. For everyone who's for everyone who is not excited about what's happened, there's a real trauma. And for some people in particular, for people of color, minorities, for the LGBT community, for women, there's a trauma. And I was talking with Chris, and he brought this idea up that in a way it's like we all have to move in with our abusive stepfather or whatever, and it's going to be really triggering for some folks. Like, it's going to bring up a post-traumatic stress kind of response. And some of you, I'm sure, have been noticing that. The rapid heartbeat, the digestion issues, the foggy thinking, the extreme fatigue, the, like I said, digestive, hot and cold. All of these trauma responses. And it's very hard when we're in trauma, when we're in fight, flight, freeze, to take any kind of meaningful action. And so I think, along with my sort of grand idea of coming from a really sort of awakened perspective about this, we also need to address the trauma. And we need to address it on a physical and emotional level. And there's lots of ways to do that, and I'm sure many of you are reaching out to the people and the resources that you have. But it's also something you can do right now on your own. And that's just to touch into something in the body that feels okay. To find a resource within your body. For anyone who's familiar with somatic experiencing work, you find that resource and you start to hang out there for a while, rather than burrowing deeper and deeper into the trauma. So just hanging out in that place in the body, and we can do it now together, just finding a place in the body that feels grounded, that feels maybe pleasant or relaxed. For a lot of people, it might be the butt or the thighs, or it might be like the hands or something like that, just a neutral area. And we just put our attention there. And find resource, find safety in our own bodies. And the response, the heartbeat, the sweating, the digestion, the ache in the chest that I know many of you are feeling, that might still be going on, but you can use your mindfulness tools to bring your attention back to what feels grounded, what feels neutral, what feels relaxed, what feels maybe pleasant in the body. And then as you feel ready, maybe you touch into the more challenging experiences in the body. And then again, coming back to the resource, sort of moving back and forth. What we want to do is come to a place where we're a little more stabilized and we're no longer in fight or flight or freeze. Because again, when we're in that mode, the brain's really not functioning. So we want to be really careful about driving over the next couple days, just for safety, for personal safety, but also we want to be really aware of how we're interacting with our partners, with our family, with our friends, with our coworkers, to make sure we're not coming from a place of trauma, to make sure we're not coming from a place of fight, flight, freeze. So if we can sort of get a handle on that with ourselves and really kind of find some acceptance with the experience of this trauma being triggered, and at the same time find resource, then we're going to be equipped to be with the humans in our life in a compassionate and loving and kind way. So that's our responsibility, to just get really clear, am I in trauma mode right now? And can I start to address that in a way that allows me a little space from that? But also just to honor that, yeah, it's traumatic. It's traumatic on lots of levels. So honor that and know that whatever reaction you're having, it's okay. And in that honoring of it, also be willing to continue to see. So a lot of people last night were saying, thank God for wine, I'm heading to the bar, and that's fine, like that. I'm not saying don't do that. If that's the way that you're soothing today, okay. But do your best to have that be a short-lived solution. Because this experience, this is giving us an opportunity to drop into something very, very important. Again, coming back to this idea of dropping into shadow and being willing to see it. We don't want to miss out on this opportunity. And if we're checking out, whether that's checking out by getting drunk or checking out by getting obsessed with the news about the election, or whether we're checking out by pretending like nothing's going on, we're missing an opportunity. And we're sort of repressing our humanity. And so part of this spiritual journey and spiritual path and path of a spiritual activist is to fully embrace the humanity and to see it. To see it so we can see it in others. To have compassion for it so we can have compassion for others. So we address the trauma and we work with it and we get ourselves to a place where we're stable and we're able to be functioning, right? I know for a lot of people aren't really functioning today. And like I said, I kind of needed to take today for myself as well, to a certain extent. But we want to get to a place where we can function, and part of that is addressing the trauma. And then part of that is also being willing to feel everything you're feeling. Feel it. Feel all of this. But in feeling all of this, be really aware of whether or not you're spending a whole lot of time thinking about all of this. And most folks are, because of course they are. This is a huge, huge and scary experience for half of the country, right? More than half of the country, I think it is. And it's important that we feel all of that. But don't spend all day and night thinking about all of that. Because it doesn't matter how many times you think about wishing it was different. That doesn't change anything. It doesn't matter whether you're thinking about the election or whether you're thinking about a relationship that went wrong or something you wish you hadn't said this week. Thinking about wishing it wasn't so does not make it not so. And in fact, all it does is deliver you right into suffering. Now there is suffering and will continue to be suffering as a result of what's happened. But we get to choose moment by moment, do we want to believe in and encourage and engage with that suffering? And if you do, well then you just keep getting caught in the thoughts. Keep replaying the worst case scenario. Keep talking to the people who are replaying the worst case scenario and you can play it together. Keep reading the really hateful, scary stuff you can find online. That's an option. But you don't have to do that. And not doing that doesn't mean you're not aware of it, that you're not taking it in, that you're not feeling it. Feeling it and running it again and again and again in your head are two different things. And the stuff going on in the head will distract you from the stuff that's actually happening in the body on an emotional level. And so we need to drop into the body, drop into what we're actually feeling. And so let's just try that. And remember, you have that tool of resourcing. So if this is too much, just go to the resource. Go to something that feels good. But just try it. What does it feel like in your body to know that Trump will be our president? What does that feel like? I can tell you, for me, there's a knot in here, sort of a throbbing knot. And I can feel some sort of heaviness in my face. A little bit of a tightness in my jaw. And a little itch in the throat. And so we just drop into those sensations, those emotional sensations. We let go of resistance to them. We let go of trying to figure them out, make them go away, or change them. Simply feel, simply experience, simply allow those waves of sensation to move through. Separate from the thought. This does not mean to quiet your mind. Please don't try to push the thoughts down. Instead, put your attention on the actual emotional experience that you're having today, that you're having right now. Feel it. Let it break you open. Let it massage you, tenderize you. And as you lean into acceptance and curiosity and even love of what is happening emotionally in the body, it starts to change. It might start to dissipate. It might also get stronger for a bit. But our relationship starts to shift with it when we separate what's happening emotionally from what's happening in the mind. It starts to become rising and falling sensation. So we can make that choice moment by moment to just leave the thoughts alone, let them do what they're doing, let them play their worst case scenario stories. And bring yourself back to what it feels like in the body. And see if you can let go of the story of it. This is sadness, this is grief, this is anger. Instead, just feel the sensation, the pure sensation. Grinding and undulating and tingling through the body. So it just takes this willingness, to let go of our addiction to the mind. To start to relieve suffering. And when we've learned that suffering is optional, and that there are ways we choose to suffer and we can choose something else, when we really deeply experience that and live that moment to moment in our lives, we then model it for others. We then make it possible for others. And you don't need to be a teacher in order to teach, in order to share that, in order to model that. You simply need to keep remembering. Keep remembering. And keep remembering. Moment by moment. That you don't have to suffer. And then you might suffer. Then you might spend a day suffering, and then you remember again. And again, I believe that suffering is powerful and it teaches us a ton. And I also think when we learn that it's optional, there's a new kind of work that can be done. So we as a people, we as a community, we can do a lot more to enact change and transformation if we take personal responsibility, personal accountability for our own suffering. And make the choice to just feel the pain rather than suffer. Just feel it. Just feel it. It feels like this. It feels like this. And there's a thought. And then it feels like this. And here's an image of something scary, of something we don't want, and then there's a contraction in the chest. There's a tightening of the eyes. And we feel it, and we allow it, and we soften. And we soften, and we soften, and we soften, and we soften again and again and again and again and again, until there are no edges. And that brings us right back to where we started tonight with the lack of separation. So we can look at that in an intellectual way, sort of just the insight of oneness. We are not separate. We are not separate. And we can also come at it from this other angle of work in the body, work with the mind, work with acceptance, which then leads to the softening, 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 softening of the edges of the boundaries until we just see it. Until we simply cannot deny the lack of separation. So I feel like that's all I have to say for tonight, and I think I'll talk some more tomorrow on this. If you are looking for somewhere to be tonight to put some of these ideas into practice, Chris will be teaching in Highland Park. So if you're in Los Angeles, Chris will be teaching in Highland Park. There's a link in the description for that class. And of course, there's the weekend events as well. And I have my Friday morning Facebook Live class, which I probably will tailor around tools for dealing with this outcome. But I would love to just open it up if anybody has questions or anything that they feel like they want to dialogue with me a little bit about. Again, I know that I haven't been able to personally respond to everyone that's reached out to me, and I certainly will. But in the meantime, this is a way that we can dialogue a little bit for just a couple minutes. So if anybody has, if I can be of help to you, if I can support you in what you're going through right now, I would like to be able to do that. So just feel free to type it in the comment section if there's anything that feels like it wants to be said or wants to be asked. And if you want to just hang out for a bit, we can just hang out with moments of silence until somebody has something they want to put out there. Kind of like a Quaker meeting for worship. And actually, while we're hanging out in this period of silence, I'm going to plug my phone in because I think it's going to die. So, yeah, I'll give it a few more minutes and see if anyone wants to dialogue about anything. Okay, so it looks like, yeah, it looks like silence is the thing. So let's just take a few more minutes together. Just taking a few more minutes, and let's just see if we can generate a little bit of love and kindness for each other. So the advanced version is to generate that for the people that are celebrating. We're not going to do that tonight. I mean, I welcome you to do that, and I'll probably do that. But I like to just generate it for each other, for the people that are grieving, for the people that are feeling afraid and angry and hurt, and for ourselves. So, taking a moment to contact something in your own body that feels okay. Something within your own body that feels safe, that feels grounded. And I want you to imagine that you are not only surrounded and enveloped in, but are part of a vast, never-ending field of love. And if that seems impossible, think of it as being a little kid playing make-believe. And just make believe that you are in and part of this vast, unending field of love. Feel every cell of your body joining that field of love. There is no separation between you and that field of love. That field of love can hold your grief, can hold your fear, can hold your anger, can hold your confusion. There is room for all of that. So allowing all of you to become part of all of that. And this love is so big that there's no way to comprehend it with your mind. This love is so vast and so beautifully mysterious. There's no way to figure it out. And what you realize is that there is nothing but to be it. And I know that the anger and the fear is telling you, no, I'm not. No, it's not. It can't be. Because this hurts too much. But I'm telling you that yes, it is, and yes, it can be. And so let your hurt be a part of that too. Let your resistance be a part of that love too. And as you let go into it, into that vast field of love, send out little reminders of that love to all of the people who are watching this, to all of the people that you know who are in pain today. And invite them to be a part of what they already are. Invite them to remember what they really are. And know that it's totally normal to have a resistance to what I'm saying. It's the most normal reaction in the world. And all I will say is that you can recycle that reaction right in to this never-ending, vast and mysterious love. I love you. And I am here with you. I see you. I see your pain. I see your fear. I see your grief and your confusion. I see you as a whole person. And I also see you as one piece of this vast and unending and unfolding love, in which nothing is separate. And I see you and I hold space for you in both of those ways. If I can be of any help to you in the coming days, please feel free to reach out and I will get back to you as soon as I can. And if you'd like to join me tomorrow, I'll probably maybe do something similar tomorrow, and then of course Friday morning I'll be gearing the class towards tools for working with the grief and the fear and the anger that's coming up. So we'll be working with that specifically on Friday morning. And then of course on Sunday I have my class in Silver Lake, and I'm sure it will be heavily influenced by recent events. So, and then on Monday I have a women's meditation class, which will also be shaped by these events. So, yeah, know that we're here to support you. Chris has his class tonight. Information's in the description. And Kevin will be teaching Jennifer's class on leading Jennifer's group on Saturday morning. So we're here for you, and we love you. And yeah, again, reach out to me if I can be of any help to you. And I love you.